Joining us now to break down the economic issues discussed at Wednesday's debate is Grover Norquist, the founder and president of Americans for Tax Reform. So, Grover, when we look at last night, it was clear that Senator Kamala Harris wanted to make the conversation about the coronavirus response. And then it seemed like Vice President Mike Pence would try to speak about that subject through more of an economic angle, talking about the American recovery. Was he successful at doing that last night?
He was, and it's important both for Trump and Pence to do that. The American people trust the Republicans on the economy, on health care and some other issues. The Democrats poll better. So the more people focus on tax cuts versus tax increases, less regulation rather than more, a stronger economy rather than a weaker economy, the better it is for Pence and President Trump.
And Senator Kamala Harris and former Vice President Joe Biden have said this multiple times, that on day one, they would repeal the GOP tax cuts. And, yes, of course, former Vice President Joe Biden has said that he wants to raise the corporate tax rate from, I believe it's 21% to 28%. That's not very politically, I would say, good of an argument necessarily. The average person, I don't think, likes hearing that their taxes are going to be raised or anything like that. But what would that do for the average worker, the average American?
Well, he said two things. One is, and Kamala Harris has said it 13 times, and the presidential candidate Biden said it 9 times on television, on tape, that they would, day one, end the entire Trump tax cut. What does that mean? That means for a family of 4, the median income family of 4, dead center, a $2,000 tax increase. It means 5 million Americans who were hit by the Obamacare tax penalty because they didn't buy Obamacare, either $700 or $2,000 fine, tax penalty because they didn't buy Obamacare. 5 million people, 3/4 of whom earn less than $50,000. There are a series of tax increases on the middle class if you abolish the Trump tax cut, because the Trump tax cut middle income taxes by a larger percentage than rich people's taxes. So the Democratic lie for this whole time was that was only a tax cut for corporations and rich people, and therefore when we get rid of it, it'll only raise taxes on the rich and corporations. But that's not true. And so when when Biden says, I will abolish the entire Trump tax cut, he is promising massive tax increases on middle-income people. But then he says, I won't raise anyone's taxes unless they earn more than $400,000. That's not true. And when he was elected in 2008, along with Obama, he had a lie back then that he wouldn't raise taxes on anyone who earned less than $250,000. And then he proceeded to do just that. So if we get fooled again, it's our own fault. He lied in 2008 on whether he'd tax the middle class, and he's telling us that he won't. But he is being honest when he says, I'm going to get $1.9 trillion from the American people by repealing the Trump tax cut, much of that straight out of the pockets of middle-income Americans.
And I'm glad you brought up that 400,000 number, because I was thinking about this last night from a procedural angle, if you will. The president doesn't have the ability, for example, to just do that unilaterally. I mean, it would take congressional approval, I suppose, or
yes,
perhaps some form of legislation in order to do that. But so say, for example, that Congress were to repeal it or something, the 400,000 number, I mean, is that just an arbitrary number that he's pulling out? Because I don't think you can undo part of the tax cut, for example, but still leave the other part in place. I'm a little bit confused as this procedurally.
Well, what he's trying to tell you is I'm only going to tax the 1%. However, you mentioned he wants to raise the corporate income tax. Sometimes he says to 28%. Sometimes he says to 35%. Abolishing the Trump tax cut is a 35% corporate rate, not 28%. What does that do? Makes our corporate tax, our business tax, higher than communist China's, higher than Germany, higher than Britain, higher than Canada, higher than most other countries. The reason we did so poorly under Obama and Biden was our business taxes were worse than China's or Europe's. Now they're better than most of Europe and all of China. What our friend Mr. Biden wants to do is throw away that advantage that we now have, bring us back to the days when companies left the United States because our tax policies were worse than other countries. About 4,000 different companies got bought up or moved their corporate headquarters out because of Biden and Obama's high tax rates. But it's not just the companies. When companies get taxed more, the stock market goes down. Who owns stocks? 100 million Americans have 401ks or individual retirement accounts or 403bs, have life savings in the stock market, and every month they see that their life savings has gone up or down. They went up very strongly under Trump. They went down during COVID, but never down as low as they were under Biden and Obama. And now they're coming back up again to the heights they were at before. So a raise on corporate income taxes is to cut your life savings in your 401k and make it worth less.
And I think that the Trump campaign needs to make that argument because, for example, I don't think when they just say necessarily that Wall Street is thriving, that the average American really knows what that means for them. I mean, maybe the ones with 401ks do, maybe ones who are paying attention to Wall Street know what's going on, but I think that there has to be more of a, I would say, populist message to some degree.
Yes.
I mean, for example, this morning there was an article in the Washington Post saying Wall Street is now on board with the Biden campaign. I think that's something that could be used against the Biden campaign. I don't think it's as favorable of a headline as many people think. But Grover, I really appreciate you coming on, breaking down the nuances of this policy because it's something that's very important. It's something, one of those few issues that could actually affect the American electorate. So I think it's an important one for them to understand. Thank you.